Very good morning. From the unit of solubility of drug. In this lecture, we will discuss distribution law. What is distribution law? How distribution law is applied? That is, what are its applications? What are its limitations? What are the conditions of distribution law? So, you may heard about the term distribution. Simply, distribution means it will get spread out. It will get distribute. Okay, that is nothing but the distribution. But in pharmaceutical, you know that the number of substances and the particles which may be pharmaceutical preparation in such a way that if we took two immiscible solvents, let us consider these two immiscible solvents are solvent A and solvent B in a beaker. So what happens as these are immiscible? Immiscible means simply the mixture of liquids when it in contact, it will not get mixed. Okay, they will remains present into the two separate layers. For such liquids, we are calling as a immiscible liquids. So if we have taken the solvent A and solvent B, which are immiscible to each others, in beaker, they will be present into the two separate layers. If you shake vigorously for a specific period of time, they will get mixed, or we can feel that these are get mixed, but they will remains into the two separate layer. So as I told you in pharmaceutical preparations, we are going to add the substance into the mixture of two immiscible liquids. Let us see. In this case, if you add the solute, it is a substance. Let us consider solute X, which is soluble into the both the solvents, in which we are going to add this solute X. So what happens as the solute X is soluble into the both the solvents, it will get distributed into the two liquids, or you may call it as an partition between two solvents. Okay, so what will happen? Some of the part of that solute X, it will be present into the solvent A. Some of the parts of that solute X, it will be present into the solvent B. So what it indicate? That solute X, what is the concentration of solute X, which is dissolved, which is solubilized into this two separate layer, it will be present into the both the layers. Okay, in somewhat proportion. So what happen when these are solute X, it will get solubilized into solvent A and B. So generally what happen, the molecules of solute, they will move, they will pass from the one solvent to the another solvent. That is in this case here from the solvent A to the solvent B, and from solvent B to the solvent A, because it is soluble into the both the layer, into the both the solvent. And we know that we have studied the solute molecules, they will get move, they will get transfer, they will get pass from the higher concentration to the lower concentrations. They are trying to reach the equilibrium conditions. That means they are trying to reach the state, the level, the condition at which the concentration of the solute, that is in this case concentration of X, it will be reached to the equal in both the solvent A and solvent B. So until and unless that concentration of the X which is present into the both the layers, it will not become the equilibrium conditions. What happens? The solute molecules, it will be move, it will be passed from the A to B and B to A and try to reach the equilibrium condition. That is the equal concentration of solute in two layers of solvent A and solvent B. So at this condition, what happens? The dynamic equilibrium is set up. So as I have explained what is equilibrium. And at equilibrium, what happens? The rate at which molecules of the solute, they will get passed from the one solvent to the another solvent, it will be same. It will be balanced because the concentration of the solute which is present into the both the layer, it is same. And we know that rate is depends upon the concentration, and as the concentration is same in both the layers, what will happen? The rate at which the molecules they are getting passed from the A to B and from B to A, it will be same. Okay, so we can say that the rate of molecules of the solute which are going to be passed from the A to B and B to A, it will be balanced, it will be same. Okay, let us see. In a beaker, we have taken the solute and to solvent. This solvent A and solvent B. Initially, if you have taken the solvent A and solvent B, if you mix these two immiscible solvent A and B in beaker, we are getting such types of the two layers because these are immiscible. Okay, these two solvents A and B which are non-miscible to the each others, and in such a immiscible solvent A and B, as they are present into the separate layer, if you add the solute X, the solute X which is solubilized into both the layers, into both the solvent A and B. So what happens after addition of the solute as it is present into the both the solvents? Okay, because it is solubilized into the both the solvent. So what happens? The solute X, it will be present into the solvent A layer, it will be present into the solvent B layer, and its movement of the rate at which it will get passed from the A to B and B to A, it will be depends upon the its concentration. Let us see if the concentration of the solute X, if it is more into the solvent A, definitely the rate of the passing or the rate of transport of this solute X from A to B, it will be more because from higher concentration to the lower concentration. Okay, so at this equilibrium conditions, when such types of the equilibrium condition it will reach into the systems, so we can say that at equilibrium the concentration of solute X in a solvent A to the concentration of solute X in a solvent B, the ratio of these two terms, it will be constant. Okay, at the equilibrium state, what happen? The ratio of concentration of solute X in a solvent B to the concentration of solute X in a solvent B, it will be constant because the concentration and the quantity of the solute which is present at both the solvent at equilibrium, it is same. So that this ratio, it will be constant. Okay, this is about the distribution, how distribution is of solute, it will be takes place into the two immiscible liquids. So on this concept, distribution of solute into the two immiscible liquids. The scientist Nernst in 1891 has studied the distribution phenomena of the several solute in between the pair of the various immiscible solvents. We can say that ether and water. We can say that octanol and water. That is the pair of octanol and water. Pair of ethanol and water. If you take the octanol and water in a beaker, we are getting the two separate layers of the octanol and water. If you took the ether and water into the beaker, what happen? Ether will be present into the separate layer and water it will be present into the separate layer. So simply what we are getting here, we are getting the aqueous and organic layers which are separated by a boundary. Okay, so aqueous layer it will be separate, organic layer it will be separate. So in such types of the pair of solvent, the scientist Nernst in 1891 has studied the distribution phenomenon of various solutes, we can say various drug. And after this study, he has come forward and he has given the one generalized statement. That statement which is govern the distribution phenomenon of the solute into the non-miscible solvent. And whatever the generalized statement which was given by this scientist Nernst regarding the distribution of the solute into the immiscible solvent, that statement, that conditions are called as the Nernst distribution law. Okay, it is called as the Nernst distribution law, or it is simply also called as the Nernst partition law, or simply distribution law, or partition law. Okay, these four names are same. You may call it is by Nernst distribution law, you may call it is by Nernst partitions law, you may call it by distribution law or by partition law. So what was the statement of the Nernst? What was that generalized statement or the generalized conditions which was given by the Nernst and which is going to be govern the distribution of the solute into the immiscible solvent? See here, if we took the solute X which is distributed itself between two immiscible solvents A and B at constant temperature and X in the same molecular condition in both the solvent, then concentration of X in a solvent A and concentration of X in a solvent B is equal to Kd. So what Nernst has told here, if you take the solute, for example, if you take the solute X, that is substance X, and that solute X substance, it is going to be distribute itself only into the two solvent A and B at a constant temperature. And whatever the molecular condition or the molecular nature or molecular state of that solute X, it must be same into both the layers, that is both the into the aqueous and organic layer. Then what happened? The ratio of concentration of solute X in a layer A, that is in a solvent A, to the concentration of solute X into the solvent B, it will be equal to Kd. Okay, in simply what Nernst told us, if the solute get distributed into the two immiscible solvents itself at a constant temperature, and if the molecular state or the molecular condition of the solute remains same in both the solvents, then the ratio of concentration of that solute which is present into the solvent first to the concentration of that solute which is present into the solvent second, it will be equal to the Kd. That Kd is nothing but the constant. So simply the ratio of concentration of the solute which is present into the both the solvent is equal to constant at constant temperature and when the molecular nature of the solute which is present into the both the layer if it is same. So here if you put the concentration of the solute X in a solvent A, it is C1, and if you consider the concentration of solute X in a solvent B, it is C2. Okay, then we can write this above equation or above ratio in the following way, or we can express the Nernst distribution law as C1 upon C2 is equal to Kd. Okay, the Nernst law will be expressed in this form also. If you consider the C1 and C2 are the concentration of the solute X which are present into the solvent A and B. Okay, again Kd is the constant. We can call it is an distribution coefficient or partition coefficient or distribution ratio. As you have heard about the partition coefficient too many times. Okay, that is partition coefficient. It is the ratio of just concentration of solute. In another way, we have studied that partition coefficient value of K by concentration of substance in aqueous layer to the concentration of the substance into the organic layer. We have studied partition coefficient by this way. Partition coefficient K is equal to concentration in aqueous layer to the concentration of organic layer. That is nothing but the partition coefficient, also known as the distribution coefficient, also known as the distribution ratio. Okay, this is the as per Nernst distribution law. This is the about the statement of Nernst distribution law. It is quite simple. Okay, what is it? At a constant temperature, the ratio of solute distributed into the two immiscible liquid, it will be constant if the molecular condition or molecular nature of solute present in the both the solvent is same. Okay, that is concentration of solute in X in A is equal to the Kd. Okay, concentration of solute X in A solvent to the concentration of solute X in B solvent, it is equal to Kd, that is equal to constant. So is there any relationship between the solubilities and distribution law? In distribution law, we have told, okay, when a solute it is shaken with the immiscible solvent or non-miscible solvents at equilibrium conditions, what happened? Both the solvents are saturated with the solute. That means concentration of the solute which is present into both the solvent if it is same. Okay, and we have written that C1 upon C2 is equal to Kd. But in the expression of solubility, we have expressed the term solubility in terms of the concentration. Okay, how we are expressing the solubility? It is just concentration of the solute which is dissolved into the solvent, or the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent. Okay, so here we can write it. That is, as per the distribution law, equation will be C1 upon C2 is equal to Kd. But the C1 is the solubility of that solute X into the solvent A, or C2 is the solubility of solute X into the solvent B. So we can write it. Instead of C1 upon C2, we can write S1 upon S2. C1 concentration present, nothing but that much solute it dissolve, that much solute it is solubilized into that solvent. So we can write it S1 upon S2 is equal to Kd. Okay, this is the relationship between the solubilities and distribution law. So equation it will become C1 upon C2 is equal to S1 upon S2 is equal to Kd. How it comes? Solubility is nothing but the concentration of solute which is present into the solvent. Okay, that is nothing but the solubility. That much concentration is present into that solvent. So we can say that this is the solubility of that solute into the that particular solvent. That's why we have replaced C1 and C2. That's why we have written the term S1 and S2 which are equal to the C1 and C2 respectively. And as per the distribution law, as the ratio of C1 and to the C2, if it is constant, definitely the ratio of solubility of solute into the one solvent to the solubility into the another solvent, it will be remains constant. That is equal to Kd. Okay, where S1 and S2 are the solubility of the solute in the two solvent. So what we can conclude from this equation C1 upon C2 is equal to S1 upon S2 is equal to Kd. If we know, let's see, if we know the distribution coefficient, or if you know the partition coefficient of the drug, and one more important term, the solubility of the solute into the one of the solvent, then what happen? We can determine or we can calculate the solubility of the solute into the second solvent. Let us see here, if you know the value of this Kd, just put the value of Kd in this equation, and if you know the solubility of the solute one of the these solvents, let us see if you know the value of S1, that is the solubility of the solute into the solvent A. So here unknown term is S2. Okay, so just do the simple mathematical operations, you will get the value of S2. That is how we are getting the solubility of solute into the second solvent if you know the value of partition coefficient and solubility of solute into the one solvent. Okay, so this is the relationship between the solubilities and distribution law. Again, this is very important, how distribution law is related to the solubility. Okay, understood. Next is the explanation of distribution law. That is how this equation C1 upon C2 is equal to Kd, how that equation is derived. So we will see the derivations and explanation to the distribution law. We have seen that whatever the mechanism or the concept which is involved into the distribution law, it is the related to the equilibrium. Okay, everything is happening at the equilibrium conditions. We are applying this distribution law. We are considering this distribution law is an equilibrium law. So what happened at equilibrium? Let's see here. When the distribution of the solute X has reached the dynamic equilibrium, as we have explained earlier slide, how the dynamic equilibrium takes place and why it is takes place. Okay, so at that condition, what happened? Whatever the rate of the solute X which is passing from the solvent A to the solvent B, it is generally what happened? It is proportional to the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent. It is a general condition. The rate of solute which is passing from the one place to the another place, that is from the one solvent to the another solvent, it is directly proportional to the concentration which is present into that particular solvent. So in this case, here R1 at dynamic equilibrium, R1 is the rate at which molecules of X which are passing from solvent A to the solvent B, it is proportional to the concentration of the solute X which is present into the solvent A. Okay, so we can say that R1 is directly proportional to the C1. In another way, R2 is the rate at which molecules of the solute X which are passing from the solvent B to solvent A is proportional to its concentration in solvent B, that is C2. But at equilibrium, what happen? The rate of migration of solute from one solvent to the another solvent is equal, as we have discussed in earlier slide. Let us see. You have taken the two solvents, solvent A and solvent B. In this solvent A and solvent B mixture, these two layers, they are get separated into the beakers. One is the aqueous layer, one other is the organic layer, and in this we have added the solute X, and these are the concentration of the solute into the two different layers of the solvent, that is the C1 and C2. These are the concentration term of the solute which are present into the each and every layer of the solvent. Okay, that is C1 is the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent A, and C2 is the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent B. So in this case, look towards this picture. These molecules, these are moving, these arrows, these are indicating the movement of or passage of the solute molecules from the solvent A to the B. So okay, this rate, this process, this speed will be high when it will be fast if the concentration of the solute into the solvent A, if it is high, definitely what happen? The rate of solute which is passing from the A to B, it will be high, and it will be vice versa from the solvent B to the A. Okay, so that same condition it is applicable to the both the pattern, that is either it is moving or either it is passing from the solvent A to B or B to A. It is totally depends upon the concentration of that solute which is present into the particular layer. Okay, that is C1 and C2. Let's see these terms, these pictures, they are indicating the equilibrium conditions. And if the equilibrium condition is achieved, the mixture or the concentration of the solute X, if it is present into the two layers of the solvent, if it reach to the dynamic equilibrium conditions, so what happens at this dynamic equilibrium? That is R1 is directly proportional to the C1. What is R1? It is the rate of transfer or the passage of molecules from the solvent A to the solvent B, and it is proportional on what? Concentration of the solute into the solvent A. So this equation will becomes R1 is directly proportional to the C1, that is rate of passage of the solute molecule from the solvent A to the solvent B, which is directly proportional to the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent A. So we can write R1 is directly proportional to the C1. By simply mathematical equations, if you put the constant in this equation to replace the proportional sign, these equations will becomes R1 is equal to K1 into C1. Okay, where K1 is used as a just a constant, okay, to replace the proportional sign. In another case, when the solute molecule is passing from the solvent B to the solvent A, these equations will be becomes again R2 is directly proportional to the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent B, and we have considered the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent B, it is an C2. So equation it will becomes R2 is directly proportional to the C2. Again, to replace this proportional sign, we have utilized the constant, it is an K2. So equation it will becomes R2 is equal to K2 into C2. Again here K2 is the constant. But at equilibrium conditions, we have tail or the Nash distribution law. It states that at the dynamic equilibrium, what happens? The rate of migration of the solute from A to B and B to A, it will be constant. That is the rate of migration from the one solvent to the another solvent, it will be same. So in this case, what will happen? The rate R1 is equal to rate R2 at equilibrium conditions. So now we will get the equations. R1 is equal to R2. How this equation R1 is R2? How we have written here? Because at equilibrium conditions, rate of solute passing from the one solvent to the another solvent, it will be same. That is R1 upon R2. But from the equation 1 and 2, the value of R1 is equal to K1 into C1 and value of R2 is equal to K2 into C2. So we can put these values of R1 and R2 in these equations. So we will get the equation from equation 1 and 2. K1 into C1 is equal to K2 into C2. Okay. Or we can write by the again simple mathematical operation. If you change the side from the LHS to RHS and RHS to LHS, that is if you take C1 upon C2 is equal to K2 upon K1. Okay. C1 upon C2 is equal to K2 upon K1 is equal to KD. This equation is just by the simple mathematical operations to take the similar term one side. And we know that C1 upon C2 is equal to KD. Okay, or in respect of the K2 and K1, we have utilized one common constant KD. Okay, in place of K2 and K1, as these are the K2 and K1, these are the two constants. Instead of these two constants, in place of this ratio, we have utilized the common constant, that is KD. So equation it will become C1 upon C2 is equal to KD, and KD is the, what is KD? Partition coefficient or distribution coefficient, and this is the equation for the Nernst distribution law. Okay, that is C1 upon C2 is equal to KD. This is about the what? Derivation or the explanation of the Nernst distribution law and how these equations of the Nernst distribution law C1 upon C2 is equal to KD it comes. Okay. So as the K1 and K2 are the constant, at the same temperature, the distribution coefficient KD is also constant if the temperature is the fixed. That is the basic conditions for the distribution law. Temperature must be constant. Okay, understood how this derivation is come, what are R1, what are R2, what are C1, C2, what are K1, K2, and what is KD. Okay, this is overall about the derivation or explanation to the Nernst distribution law. Then what are the limitations of this distribution law? In the statement of the distribution law or in the explanation of distribution law, too many times I have told you the distribution law is applicable or the distribution law is fulfilled. The temperature must be constant. So we'll see one by one. The condition to be satisfied for the application of the Nernst distribution law are, first, very important, is constant temperature. The temperature must be remains constant throughout the experiment. Then and then only we can apply the distribution law. Then and then only we will get the value of C1 upon C2 is equal, the ratio of C1 upon C2 is equal to constant. Why the temperature must be constant? Because if the temperature change, what happen? The solubility of the solute into the particular solvent, it may get changed, because we know that solubility is the depends on the temperature. Okay, if the temperature change, there may be solubility get changed. There may be change in the solubility of the solute in particular solvent only. So to avoid such things, we have to take the temperature remains constant. We have to maintain temperature constant throughout the experiment. Then and then only we can apply the distribution law. This is the first limitation for the distribution law. Second is the same molecular state. What are the molecules state of the solute which is present into the both the solvent? It must be same. This should not be happen that solute it is remains same into the one solvent and it will get dissociate or it will get associate into the another solvent, or it should not be happen that solute it is showing the dissociation in solvent and it is showing the association in solvent B. Okay, whatever it may be, it must be same. Whatever the molecular nature, whatever the molecular condition or molecular state of that solute which going to be distributed into the two layers of the solvent must be same. Okay. Third is the equilibrium concentration. We have to withdraw the concentration for the analysis from the experiment at the equilibrium conditions only. We have to determine the concentration at equilibrium condition only. Early equilibrium concentration or attainment of the early equilibriums, we can't take it. Okay, when the equilibrium is established, when the equilibrium is takes place, we have to note down or we have to withdraw the concentration. You have to analyze the concentration only and only at equilibrium condition. This is again limitation for the distribution law. The distribution law is again applicable to the only dilute solutions. It will not be applicable to the solutions of the saturated, or we can say that will not applicable for the if the concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent if it is high. Okay, the concentration must not be high. The concentration of the solute which is present into the solvent it must be less, that is these are must be dilute solution. Then and then only we can apply the distribution law. Next is the non-miscibility of the solvent. What are the pair of solvent we are going to use, we are going to choose? These are must be immiscible to the each others. This must be from the two separate layers. Then and then only we can study the distribution phenomenon of the solute into these two separately layers of the immiscible solvent, and the mutual solubility of the solute it should be less, or it should not be changed due to the temperature or any other parameter. Okay, so these are the various limitations of the distribution law. So to satisfy or to fulfill the distribution law or to study the distribution law, we have to maintain the constant temperature of the system throughout the experiment. The molecular state of the solute must be remain same in both the solvent. We have to take the equilibrium concentration. We have to take the dilute solutions, and very important is you have to take the pair of immiscible solvents or immiscible liquids. These are the limitations of distribution law. Again, these are very, very important as concerned to your examination. Next is the what are the applications of distribution law? Why you are studying this distribution law? Where it is apply distribution law in pharmacy? There are too many applications in biology or in the biochemistry also. You might have studied about the partition coefficient distribution coefficient. In medicinal chemistry also we are going to study the distribution coefficient, or in organic chemistry also when you are studying the properties of the chemical compounds, there also we are studying the distribution coefficient, that is the partition coefficient, because the partition coefficient, that phenomenon, it is applied. Okay, again it is applied, just it is an indication of what lipophilicity of the substance. Okay, it will be utilized as a indicator for the lipophilicity of the substance. That's why we are calling it is as a, it is a one of the term, one of the important term and concept while studying the distribution or while designing the various pharmaceutical preparations or in the discovery of the drug. Okay, we'll see one by one. The partition coefficient first find applications in the medicinal chemistry and drug design. So while designing the drugs, it is must be know about the where the solubility of that drug, whether it is hydrophilic or whether it is lipophilic, how that drug it will be get penetrate on that basis, our drug, that drug it will be get absorbed, it will get distributed. So this that ADME concept it is very very important. So for this reason, while drug designing, partition coefficient it's play very very important role to determine the lipophilicity of the compounds. Okay, that's why it is used in the drug design. Second is the knowing the hydrophobic drug receptor interactions. So as I told you, hydrophobic means it is an again lipophilic. Okay, so to know the hydrophilic interaction or to know the extent of the hydrophilic interaction it takes place into the body when the drug is administered. So at that conditions also we can apply the distribution law, and by using the distribution law we can predict this value or we can conclude that whether hydrophobic interaction of the drug with receptors takes place or not. Okay, there also we can apply this distribution law. Partition coefficient value helps to study the structural activity relationship for series of compound. So we know that structural activity relationship, this term is very important in the medicinal chemistry. We can write it is capital S, capital A, capital R, that is structural activity relationship. So as the structure of the compound get changed, it's a activity it will get changed because it's a physical and chemical properties it will get changed. In organic chemistry we are studying this. Okay, if the position get changed, as the structure get changed, as the functional group get changed, if the attachment get changed, the substituent get changed, anything it will be takes place, and due to this the change in the structure is takes place of the compound. So due to the change in the structure of compound, what happened, the biological activity or the properties of that compound it will get changed. So that relations between the structure and its activity it is known as the structural activity relationship. Okay, again this partition coefficient value it will be helpful to study the SAR or the structural activity relationship of various compounds. This will be the application of distribution law. Next is the solvent extractions. So whatever the drugs we are going to extract from the mixture of solvent. Extraction means just separation, just withdrawal of the moiety, withdrawal of the substance from the mixture, or extraction of the substance from the crude material. Okay, as you are extracting the oils from the vegetables, as you are extracting the some of the drugs from the crude drugs. Crude drugs means as these are present into the natural origins. Okay, that separation process, that withdrawal process we can call as the extraction. So by using the solvent, if you carry out the process of extraction or the process of separation, it is called as the solvent extractions. So if you take the one's mixture or the one compound, and if you add into the mixture of two solvents layers, okay, as two solvent layers are separated, and if you add that substance, what happens, that substance may have the solubility into the one of the solvents. Okay, if you have taken the ether and water, and if the solute which we are going to be expect to extract, if it is having the greater solubility into the ether, so what happens at these conditions, the more extent of solute, more extent of the concentration of that particular compound, it will be present into the ether. And after separation or after evaporations, by the distillations we can separate out the concentration, or the we can separate out the compound which is present into the ether. Okay, we will not go that much in detail regarding this extraction concept and the solvent extraction concept, it is too much vast again. Okay, it will require 2-3 lectures. So here just in the solvent extraction we can apply the distribution law. Then drug solubility enhancement. How you can enhance the drug solubility? If you know the pK values of the drugs, if you know the distribution coefficient and partition coefficient value of the drug, and if by using this value we can tell that this drug it is soluble less or high in the particular solvent. So by this way we can use the different solubility enhancement techniques. Okay, if you know the value of partition coefficient or distribution coefficient. By this way, this term distribution law, it is applicable into the solubility enhancement or the drug solubility enhancement into the particular solvent. Then partition chromatography. Chromatography, it is again one of the technique of separation, one of the technique of purification, one of the technique of extractions. It is depends upon the change in color, that is chromatography. Again, it is one of the vast concept. So here we'll just see about the partition chromatography. Again, it will be depends upon the its affinity. Okay, here also we are using the two different solvents, two different phases. One is the organic and one is the aqueous, and we will just pass the material which is going to be separate. Okay, if you take the silica gel column, and from this silica gel column it will act as a just stationary phase, and at the top of that silica gel column, okay, as we have that silica gel we have soaked into the water, it will becomes the aqueous phase. At the top of that silica gel column, if we put the solution or the mixture, okay, and the another solvent, that is mobile phase, is required into the chromatography technique. That chromatographic technique, the another solvent required, it is an mobile phase. If you use the organic solvent and if you pass that organic solvent from the top to the bottom layer, okay, it will act as an organic. So that silica gel plate, it will column, it will act as an aqueous layer, and this organic solvent, if you have passed the ether, it will act as an organic phase. So what happens if the material, if it is solubilized into the organic solvent ether, what will happen? It will get pass along with that ether or organic solvent, or it will get eluted at the bottom. Okay, so on that basis it will get separated. That is partition chromatography. Next application is desilverization of lead. Okay, that is Perkins process. In the metallurgic operations, what are the metal operation, that is zinc, lead and silver. These operations which are carried out here, the mixture of the zinc, lead and silver, it is utilized in the metallurgic operations in the Perkins process. There also distribution law is applicable. Then conformity test for bromide and iodide. Then determination of associations, determination of dissociations, then determination of solubility. As I have seen the relationship between the solubility and distribution law. Again, it will utilize as a distribution indicator. Okay, these are the various applications of the distribution law, various applications of the Nernst distribution law in the pharmacy. Okay, thank you.